A deafening explosion tore through the aircraft wing. The cabin shook violently. Oxygen masks dropped like confetti. Passengers screamed in terror. Someone yelled, "We're being targeted!" Outside the window, 2 F-22 fighters closed in, missiles loaded and ready. "Sit down, kid. This isn't a game," a veteran shouted toward seat 12F. The 15-year-old girl with long brown braids slowly removed her oxygen mask and walked toward the cockpit. She grabbed the microphone, her voice ice cold. "This is Red Falcon. Target locked. Confirm my command." Outside, the F-22 pilot's voice cracked. "Red Falcon, the legacy lives. We salute." The red-eye flight from Tokyo to San Francisco hummed quietly through the darkness. Dim cabin lights cast gentle shadows as 200 passengers settled in for the long journey across the Pacific. Most were already dozing, wrapped in airline blankets, dreaming of home. In seat 12F sat Alara Vance, 15 years old with chocolate brown hair, woven into neat braids that fell past her shoulders. Wire-rimmed glasses perched delicately on her nose. She wore a crisp white button-down shirt, a navy-pleated skirt that hit just above her knees, and spotless white sneakers that looked fresh from the box. She clutched a worn leather notebook against her chest like a treasure. The cover was weathered and soft with age, and if you looked closely, you could make out a faded emblem embossed into the leather, a red falcon with wings spread wide, soaring upward. Fellow passengers glanced at her with mild curiosity and dismissive smiles. "Just another rich kid," whispered a woman in 11D, "probably flying first class on mommy and daddy's credit card." The middle-aged businessman in 12E leaned over with a condescending grin. "Try not to play with your little diary during the flight, sweetheart. This is a serious international journey, not summer camp." Alara kept her head down, her pen moving steadily across the pages. To anyone watching, she appeared to be doodling or writing teenage poetry. But the symbols flowing from her pen were precise, calculated, navigation coordinates, tactical formations, radio frequencies that most adults wouldn't recognize. When a small girl 3 rows up dropped her stuffed teddy bear into the aisle, Alara quietly unbuckled her seatbelt, retrieved the toy, and returned it with the gentlest smile. The child's mother nodded gratefully, but most passengers didn't even notice the small act of kindness. An elderly woman in 13A had been watching Alara carefully since takeoff. Something about the girl troubled her, not in a bad way, but in a deeply familiar way that she couldn't quite place. She leaned forward and whispered to the passing flight attendant, "That child, her eyes don't belong to someone so young." The flight attendant glanced over at Alara, who was once again writing in her notebook. "She seems sweet enough, quiet, well-behaved." "No," the elderly woman shook her head slowly. "Those are old eyes." Wise eyes. I've seen eyes like that before. The plane hit a patch of mild turbulence, nothing serious, just enough to make coffee cups rattle and nervous flyers grip their armrests. Most passengers jolted awake, looking around anxiously. But Alara remained perfectly calm, her hands steady as she continued writing, her breathing even and controlled. The businessman beside her chuckled nervously. "First time flying, kid? You don't seem scared at all." Alara looked up at him briefly, and for just a moment, he caught a glimpse of something in her gaze that made him inexplicably uncomfortable. It wasn't fear or uncertainty. It was assessment, like she was evaluating him, categorizing him, determining his usefulness in some unknown equation. The elderly woman continued watching, her memory working overtime. Those eyes, that calm demeanor, that quiet confidence. It reminded her of someone else, someone from decades ago. "I've seen those eyes before," she murmured to herself, her voice barely audible above the engine noise. "During the war, during the impossible missions, but they belonged to her father. They belonged to the original Red Falcon. She didn't know it yet, but she was looking at living history, a legacy written in blood and courage, passed down through generations, waiting for the right moment to emerge." The plane continued its peaceful journey through the star-filled sky, carrying its unsuspecting passengers toward a destiny none of them could imagine. At 2:47 a.m. Pacific time, everything changed in an instant. A thunderous explosion erupted from the port engine, sending shockwaves through the aircraft's aluminum frame. The explosion was so violent that passengers in the back rows were thrown against their seatbelts. Orange flames licked at the wing, visible through every left side window. The massive Boeing 777 shuddered like a wounded animal and began losing altitude rapidly. Oxygen masks tumbled from overhead compartments like yellow flowers of death, swaying hypnotically as the cabin pressure dropped. Emergency lighting bathed everything in an eerie red glow. In the cockpit, chaos reigned supreme. "Captain's unconscious," the first officer screamed into his headset, his voice cracking with panic. "Head trauma from the explosion. I can't stabilize her." We're in an uncontrolled descent. The cabin erupted in pandemonium. Passengers shrieked and sobbed, clutching their oxygen masks with white knuckles. Mothers pulled their children close. Businessmen who had been confident and composed hours earlier now prayed desperately to gods they hadn't spoken to in years. A grizzled military veteran in 14C, his Marine Corps tattoo visible beneath his rolled-up sleeves, pointed an angry finger directly at Alara. "Sit down and shut up, kid. Put your mask on. This isn't some damn video game." Other passengers joined the chorus of condescension. "Yeah, what does a little schoolgirl know about real danger? Someone get that child under control. Where are her parents?" But Alara Vance was no longer listening to their panic. She stood up slowly, deliberately, her pleated skirt swaying gently despite the aircraft's violent movements. Her movements were fluid, purposeful, like a dancer who had rehearsed this routine 1,000 times. The businessman who had mocked her earlier grabbed her arm roughly. "Little girl, I said get back to your seat. The adults are handling this crisis." Alara turned and looked directly into his eyes. There was no fear there, no uncertainty, no trace of the helpless child he expected to see. Instead, there was something that made him release his grip immediately and take an involuntary step backward. It was the look of someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. She walked toward the cockpit with steady, measured steps, ignoring the chaos around her. Passengers reached out to stop her, but something in her bearing, her absolute confidence, made them hesitate. In the cockpit, the first officer was losing hope fast. "Mayday! Mayday! This is United 847. We've lost engine power and cabin pressure. Captain is down, I repeat. Captain is down. We have no navigational control and we're losing altitude rapidly." Static filled the radio. No response. That's when Alara appeared in the cockpit doorway. Without a word, she reached into her shirt pocket and placed a small silver badge on the instrument panel. The metal caught the emergency lighting, revealing the unmistakable emblem of a Red Falcon, wings spread in flight. Beneath it, engraved in precise military lettering, were the words "Legacy Authorization, Red Falcon Squadron." The first officer's jaw dropped open. His hands froze on the controls. That's impossible. That's a legacy badge. But the Red Falcon program was classified, discontinued 15 years ago after... He stopped mid-sentence, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. Alara picked up the radio microphone, her young voice cutting through the static with crystal-clear military precision. "This is Red Falcon. I repeat, this is Red Falcon. We have hostile contact and require immediate tactical support. Target locked. Requesting immediate assistance." The radio crackled to life instantly. An F-22 pilot's voice filled with disbelief and something approaching reverence. "Red Falcon. Copy that signal. Confirming legacy authorization. The legacy lives on." NORAD's command center, which had been monitoring the situation, broke their silence. "All units stand by. Red Falcon is on communications." Repeat. Red Falcon is active. The transformation in the cabin was immediate and complete. Every passenger who had dismissed her as just a kid now stared in stunned, terrified silence. The veteran who had shouted at her was now standing at attention, his military training overriding his confusion. A corporate executive whispered to his seatmate, "Red Falcon. I've heard that call sign before. My father mentioned it once. Said it was a legend." The elderly woman who had been watching Alara smiled sadly, finally understanding what she had recognized in those young eyes. "I knew I'd seen that look before. It belonged to her father, Captain Marcus Vance, the original Red Falcon. The first officer would later tell investigators she was just 15 years old, just the daughter of a legend we thought was dead. But when she spoke that call sign, it was like the ghost of her father had taken control of the aircraft. The entire United States Air Force snapped to attention. Through the aircraft windows, passengers could now see them. Two sleek F-22 Raptors appearing out of the darkness like guardian angels, their navigation lights cutting through the night sky. But this wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. The radar screens were painting an ominous picture. Three unidentified aircraft were herding the crippled airliner toward hostile territory. This wasn't just an engine failure. Someone was deliberately trying to bring them down. The girl they had laughed at, the child they had dismissed, was now their only hope for survival. Red Falcon, this is NORAD Command. We have confirmation of 3 hostile aircraft in your vicinity. Please confirm visual contact. Ilara's response was swift and professional, her voice carrying an authority that seemed impossible from someone her age. NORAD, this is Red Falcon. Confirming hostile contact. Vector 240, altitude descending. Hostiles are herding us toward the DMZ. This is not an accident. Repeat, this is a coordinated attack. The lead F-22 pilot, call sign Eagle 1, whispered to his wingman over a private channel. She carries the Red Falcon legacy. I served with her father before he was killed in action. I thought that bloodline died with him 15 years ago. Ilara's voice cut through their conversation like ice. Eagle Flight, this is Red Falcon. Legacy doesn't die. It flows through blood, through training, through sacrifice. It lives through me. The tactical display in the cockpit painted a terrifying picture. 3 military-grade aircraft, origin unknown, were executing a perfect intercept pattern designed to force the commercial airliner into a narrow corridor that would take them straight into hostile airspace. The first officer's hands trembled on the controls. We're completely defenseless up here. They're boxing us in. We can't climb, we can't turn, and we're losing altitude by the minute. Ilara studied the radar screen with the calm focus of a seasoned air traffic controller, her young fingers tracing potential flight paths. Eagle 1 and Eagle 2, this is Red Falcon. Execute intercept pattern Delta 7. I'm painting primary targets now. Priority sequence, lead bandit, then flanking support. Roger, Red Falcon. Eagle flight weapons hot. Awaiting your command. The cabin had fallen into an eerie silence. Passengers who had been screaming in panic just minutes earlier now watched through the windows as this teenage girl commanded some of the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world. The businessman who had grabbed her arm was now pressed against his seat, his face white as paper. A corporate executive whispered in terrified awe, "She's commanding the United States Air Force. A 15-year-old girl in a school uniform is directing a military operation." Ilara glanced back at the passengers, her voice steady and controlled. "You told me to sit down and be quiet. You said I was just a child playing games. Now I need all of you to do exactly what I've been doing. Sit down, stay calm, and trust in something bigger than your fear." Through the aircraft windows, passengers watched in breathless amazement as 2 F-22 Raptors streaked past their aircraft, their afterburners painting brilliant trails of fire against the star-filled sky. Red Falcon, this is Eagle 1. We have visual on all 3 hostiles. Unidentified military aircraft, probably foreign manufacture. They're definitely trying to force you into prohibited airspace. Eagle 2, flanking maneuver. Come in high and fast. Don't give them time to think. The first hostile aircraft, realizing it had been detected and engaged, tried to break formation and escape. It never had a chance. Eagle 1's missiles streaked through the darkness like a falling star, connecting with devastating precision. The enemy aircraft exploded in a brilliant orange fireball that lit up the sky for miles. Passengers throughout the cabin gasped and pointed, some crying with relief, others recording the incredible scene on their phones. Splash 1, Eagle 1 reported with satisfaction. 1 hostile down. The second enemy aircraft attempted to engage the F-22s directly, forgetting entirely about the commercial airliner it had been assigned to capture. It was a fatal mistake. Eagle 2 was already in position, coming down from above with the advantage of altitude and speed. Eagle 2, Fox 3, missile away. Another explosion painted the night sky in brilliant colors. Debris from the second hostile aircraft scattered across the darkness, pieces glowing red-hot as they fell toward the ocean below. Splash 2, two hostiles neutralized, but the third aircraft, more cunning than its companions, had positioned itself perfectly for one desperate gambit. Instead of engaging the F-22s, it turned its weapons directly toward the helpless commercial airliner. Alarms screamed in the cockpit as missile lock warnings filled the air. "Red Falcon!" the first officer screamed. "They're targeting us directly. Incoming missile!" Ilara's voice rang out with absolute authority, cutting through the chaos like a sword. "Eagle flight, priority target bearing 090. Hostile has missile lock on civilian aircraft. This is a Red Falcon emergency command. Take the shot immediately." "Red Falcon, this is Eagle 1. I have the shot. Weapons free. Execute immediately." The final enemy aircraft never had time to fire its missile. Eagle 1's intercept was perfect, striking the hostile just as its weapon systems came online. The explosion was so close that the commercial airliner shook from the shockwave, but they were safe. Splash 3, all hostiles neutralize. "Red Falcon, you are clear to proceed." Passengers throughout the cabin erupted in cheers, crying and hugging strangers, looking out at the brightening sky with profound gratitude. The veteran who had shouted at Ilara stood up and saluted, tears streaming down his weathered face. The elderly woman who had recognized something special in Ilara's eyes spoke softly to anyone who would listen. They laughed at her white shirt and pleated skirt. They saw a schoolgirl with braided hair and thought she was helpless. But when she spoke the Red Falcon call sign, the entire sky bowed down and listened. "Red Falcon," the radio crackled with deep respect. "This is NORAD command. All hostile contacts neutralized. We have a clear corridor to Edwards Air Force Base for emergency landing. And Red Falcon, we salute the bloodline. Welcome back to active duty." As the damaged aircraft began its controlled descent toward the military airfield, every passenger realized they had just witnessed something extraordinary. A 15-year-old girl had not only saved 200 lives, but had proven that heroic legacies don't die. They pass from one generation to the next, stronger and more determined than ever before. The girl in seat 12F had just made the entire United States military snap to attention, and she wasn't even old enough to vote. The Boeing 777 touched down safely at Edwards Air Force Base at 4:23 a.m., its damaged engine smoking, but its passengers alive. All 200 souls aboard walked off that aircraft under their own power, and within 6 hours the story had spread to every corner of the globe. CNN's breaking news banner read, "Teenage girl with military call sign Red Falcon commands Air Force, saves 200 lives." BBC World Service led with, "15-year-old heir to legendary pilot directs mid-air battle." Even international networks picked up the story, translating it into dozens of languages. Social media exploded with unprecedented speed. A Facebook group called Saved by Red Falcon appeared within hours, filled with testimonials from grateful passengers, photos from the rescue, and emotional videos recorded during the flight. The little girl with the teddy bear, now safely reunited with her parents, gave an interview to local news. "The pretty lady with braids saved all of us. She wasn't scared at all. She talked to the big airplanes and made the bad guys go away." The elderly woman who had recognized something special in Ilara's eyes became an instant media sensation, giving interviews to every reporter who would listen. Young people today, they judge by appearances. They saw a schoolgirl in a white shirt and pleated skirt and thought she was helpless. But I knew better. I'd seen those eyes before during the war. When she spoke that call sign, every pilot in the Pacific Fleet remembered why they serve. NORAD released an unprecedented official statement. Legacy call sign Red Falcon has been reactivated. The tradition continues through verified bloodline authorization. We are honored to welcome the next generation into service. Military historians went into overdrive, digging up classified records about the original Red Falcon program. What they found was extraordinary. Captain Marcus Vance had been one of the most decorated pilots in recent history, responsible for saving hundreds of lives in covert operations before his death 15 years ago. One by one, passengers who had dismissed Ilara as just a kid approached her during the lengthy debriefing process, their heads hung in shame. The businessman who had grabbed her arm stood before her with tears in his eyes. Miss Vance, I owe you my life, and I owe you an apology. I judged you completely wrong. I saw a child when I should have seen a hero. The military veteran who had shouted at her stood at rigid attention. Ma'am, I should have recognized command presence when I saw it. Your bearing, your confidence, it was all there. I was just too ignorant to see it. Elara looked at each of them with the same calm dignity she had shown 30,000 feet above the Pacific. I don't need your apologies. What I need is for you to remember this moment. Remember that heroism doesn't come with age requirements. Remember that courage doesn't check your birth certificate. And please, please remember, never underestimate someone based on their appearance, their age, or what you think you know about their capabilities. The first officer, who had witnessed the entire extraordinary event from the cockpit, gave an emotional interview that went viral within hours. I've been flying commercial aircraft for 23 years. I've seen engine failures, bird strikes, severe weather, medical emergencies, you name it. But I have never, and I mean never, seen anything like what happened up there. A 15-year-old girl took command of a tactical air operation involving multiple military assets and saved every soul on board. She didn't just save lives, she reminded all of us what real leadership looks like. Comment Red Falcon if you believe that heroic legacies can live on through new generations and that true courage knows no age limits. 6 months later, Elara Vance returned to her life as a high school sophomore in San Diego. White button-down shirt, navy pleated skirt, wire-rimmed glasses, brown hair and neat braids. To most people walking past Jefferson High School, she looked exactly like any other teenage girl hurrying to chemistry class with an armload of textbooks. But 200 passengers scattered across the globe would never forget the girl who had commanded the sky and saved their lives. The F-22 pilot who had first responded to her emergency call, now identified as Colonel James Mitchell, gave a final interview that became the most watched military testimony in YouTube history. We thought the Red Falcon legend died with Captain Marcus Vance 15 years ago. We thought that kind of courage, that level of tactical brilliance was gone forever. But legends don't die. They pass from father to daughter, from one generation to the next, stronger and more determined than ever before. At her high school, Elara became quietly famous in the way that only teenagers can understand. Students would whisper as she passed in the hallways, "That's her. That's Red Falcon's daughter. She saved 200 people." But fame never changed her fundamental character. She still helped struggling students with their homework. She still picked up dropped books in crowded corridors. She still smiled at the shy kids who ate lunch alone. The elderly passenger from seat 13A visited Elara's school to speak at a special assembly about courage and legacy. I learned something that night at 30,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean. Heroes don't always wear military uniforms or carry weapons or have years of experience. Sometimes they wear school uniforms. Sometimes they carry textbooks. Sometimes they're 15 years old and look like they should be worried about prom dresses instead of tactical air operations. But they all share one thing. They step up when the moment demands it. Elara kept her father's worn leather notebook close, remembering his handwritten words on the final page. If you ever have to use the Red Falcon call sign, use it to protect others, never to show off. Use it to serve something bigger than yourself. Use it to prove that heroism runs in families, but it's earned by individuals. The world learned that courage isn't about age, experience, or recognition. Sometimes it's about preparation meeting opportunity. Sometimes it's about having the right training, the right mindset, and the willingness to act when others cannot. Elara's story spread far beyond aviation enthusiasts and military families. It became a reminder that extraordinary people live ordinary lives until extraordinary moments call them forward. If you believe in stories that touch the heart and inspire real courage, leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to SN Touching Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people creating and sharing real inspiration, not mass-produced content. These are the stories that remind us. Heroes walk among us every day, wearing school uniforms and carrying backpacks, waiting for their moment to change the world.